Before I start, I want to give a special thanks to the Braids Nightmare Farm crew on Discord for helping me along. This includes JB Gartner, Moose Truce, Mossos, Mauled Prob, Scrubcheck Gaming, Teeter Dance, and Just Ice. I also want to give a shout out to Greyface Gaming. I love your crick content. Today, I want to go over one of my favorite CEDH deck lists. This is not a top tier list by any means, but this list has put in work for me. I've been playing this deck for over 2.5 years now, and I've won several tournaments with it, including a high-stakes CEDH tournament. The commander is Braids, Arisen Nightmare. Braids Arisen Nightmare is a 3 CMC 3/3 legendary creature nightmare that says, at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life, and you draw a card. While this is not a deck that needs its commander to win, getting Braids out early gives you tremendous card advantage. The highest performing decks in CEDH produce good results because they are constantly drawing cards. Piloting Braids is no different. If you can draw cards, and lots of them early on, you'll have the ability to assemble your win condition sooner. Since this is a monocolored deck, it does suffer from a lack of card quality that decks like Blue Farm, Rogsai, Sisay, Kinnan, and even Rahl have access to. Since Braids runs no counterspells, it is vital to understand what you're getting into. At its heart, this is a combo deck that relies on a style of play that will require you to politic dynamically, make threats when necessary, and sit back and stay out of stack wars when at all possible. You also must be comfortable with the idea of sacrificing lands, your own artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and Braids herself. Let's briefly go over some of the play patterns you'll experience with this list. You'll be generating card advantage using Braids Arisen Nightmare, Necro Potence, Necro Dominance, the One Ring, Bolas's Citadel, Peer into the Abyss, Razaketh the Foul-Blooded, and Vilis, Broker of Blood. You'll be putting creatures and artifacts into the graveyard using Entomb, Unmarked Grave, Buried Alive, Insidious Dreams, Incarnation Technique, and Disciples of Gix. Finally, you'll be reanimating them on the cheap using Reanimate, Animate Dead, Necromancy, Goryo's Vengeance, Shallow Grave, and Corpse Dance. Since this is a mono-black deck, your pods will carry the expectation that you will be using your life as a resource. And while this is not the primary method to get this deck off the ground, I very often win games with a single-digit life total. Braids excels at full 4-person pods. 3-player pods decreases her overall efficiency by 33%. You also lose significant politic power in smaller pods, so just be aware of this. Expect to take damage from other players, especially combat damage. They do not want you as a mono-black player to draw 35 cards off of Necropotence. This deck is very similar to Anala Archmage Ritualist, and that we also like to play out of our graveyard. This means there will be times you will experience the joy of trying to figure out how to win through graveyard hate. You should play this deck if Reanimator strategies are fun for you. If you like the idea of playing intricate and weird off-meta combos. If you're not afraid to lose, sometimes horribly. This is just the reality of running a monocolored deck in a CEDH setting. If you like the idea of playing a deck that doesn't need its commander to operate. And finally, does Braids Arisen Nightmare spark joy? If so, you should play this deck. Typically speaking, you want to get Braids Arisen Nightmare out on turn 1 or turn 2 at the latest. In your opening hand, you want to look for ritual effects, Lion's Eye Diamond, or other card advantage engines. Let's take a look at an example of a good starting hand to see how this deck should play. So in our opening hand we have Eumidian Hatchery, Vexing Bauble, Lion's Eye Diamond, Engineered Explosives, Dark Ritual, Grief, and finally, Not Dead After All. This opening hand does everything we want to be doing on turn 1 and turn 2. We have a land, we have ritual effects, sacrifice fodder for Braids, and a Vexing Bauble. There are a couple of ways to play this hand out. Here's how I would do it. I would play Eumidian Hatchery. I would then exile Not Dead After All from my hand, evoking Grief. When Grief ETBs, I'll choose target opponent, they'll reveal their hand. I'll choose a non-land card from it. They discard that card. Grief goes to the graveyard. I will then cast Engineered Explosives for 0. I will cast LED. I will then tap Eumidian Hatchery, paying 1 life, adding 1 black mana to my mana pool, and putting a hatchling counter on to Eumidian Hatchery. I will then play Vexing Bauble. I will then crack LED, discarding my hand, adding 3 black mana to my mana pool, and cast Braids, Arisen Nightmare. On my end step, I will sacrifice Engineered Explosives. I will ask the player across from me, would you like to sacrifice an artifact? If they didn't, they lose 2 life, I draw a card. I will repeat that process twice, and hopefully, I'll have 3 cards in my hand. On turn 2, I'll untap, draw a card, and begin the process again. The primary Wincon in this deck is a non-deterministic 3-card combo involving Trazyn the Infinite, Phyrexian Devourer, and Walking Ballista. Let's take a look at each card individually to see how they synergize together. The first card, Trazyn the Infinite, is a 6 CMC 4/6 legendary artifact creature Necron with Death Touch. He has an ability called Prismatic Gallery that says, as long as Trazyn the Infinite is on the battlefield, it has all activated abilities of all artifact cards in your graveyard. The second card, Phyrexian Devourer, has new rules text. It is a 6 CMC 1/1 artifact creature Phyrexian Construct. When this creature's power is 7 or greater, sacrifice it. It has an activated ability that says, exile the top card of your library. Put X +1/+1 counters on this creature, where X is the exiled card's mana value. The final card, Walking Ballista, is an XX00 artifact creature construct. Walking Ballista enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. It has an activated ability for 4 colorless mana that says, put a +1/+1 counter on Walking Ballista. It also has another activated ability that says, remove a +1/+1 counter from Walking Ballista. It deals 1 damage to any target. The way that this combo works involves having Trazyn the Infinite on the battlefield and Phyrexian Devourer and Walking Ballista in the graveyard. Because Trazyn the Infinite is on the battlefield, it will gain all the activated abilities of Walking Ballista and Phyrexian Devourer. We can then use Phyrexian Devourer's activated ability to exile cards off the top of our library, putting +1/+1 counters onto Trazyn the Infinite. So for example, we exile this Spell the Profane. It is 4 CMC, therefore we put 4 +1/+1 counters onto Trazyn the Infinite. We can then use Walking Ballista's second activated ability to deal 1 point of damage for each +1/+1 counter that we remove. Even though this combo is non-deterministic, we run 193 total CMC. While not guaranteed, this should allow you to do enough damage to close out most games. The reason why I like this combo so much is it's resilient, surprising. It can all happen at instant speed, which means you can win on the stat, on top of somebody else's win attempt on another player's turn. All you need is Trazyn the Infinite, Phyrexian Devourer, and Walking Ballista in your graveyard. You can then reanimate Trazyn the Infinite at instant speed using cards such as Goryo's Vengeance, Necromancy, Corpse Dance, and Shallow Grave. When Trazyn the Infinite hits the battlefield, he will have all the activated abilities of Phyrexian Devourer and Walking Ballista. These activated abilities do not have any timing restrictions, so if you Shallow Grave Trazyn the Infinite on somebody else's turn, when he hits the battlefield, you can activate Phyrexian Devourer using its ability, exile your entire library, put that many +1/+1 counters based upon the amount of CMC you've exiled, and then use Walking Ballista's second ability to shoot the table and win the game. Even if somebody were to destroy or exile Trazyn, you can activate the abilities of Phyrexian Devourer and Walking Ballista. The same could be said if somebody tried to exile your graveyard. In response, you can activate the ability of Phyrexian Devourer, exile all your cards from your library, put +1/+1 counters onto Trazyn, and use Walking Ballista's second ability to shoot the table and win. There is another way to win with Trazyn at instant speed that does not involve Phyrexian Devourer. He needs to have haste, however. There are 3 cards in the deck that can give us this. That is Shallow Grave, Goryo's Vengeance, and Corpse Dance. Necromancy will not work here as it does not give haste, so do not try to win using this card in this way. The cards you want in your graveyard are Walking Ballista, a mana rock that makes 2 or more colorless mana. In this case, we'll be using the add 3 colorless mana ability on Grim Monolith. And you want Staff of Domination. We'll be using the 1 mana untap ability on this card. Assuming Trazyn the Infinite is on the battlefield with haste, and Walking Ballista, Grim Monolith, and Staff of Domination are in the graveyard, you can then tap Trazyn the Infinite for 3 colorless mana using Grim Monolith's mana ability. You can use Staff of Domination's untap ability to spend 1 mana and untap Trazyn the Infinite. You can then tap Trazyn the Infinite for 3 more colorless mana. You can do this an infinite amount of times and use Walking Ballista's first activated ability, which will allow you to put infinite +1/+1 counters onto Trazyn the Infinite. You can then use Walking Ballista's second activated ability to shoot the table for an infinite amount of damage and win the game. Let's briefly go over some of the cards I like to use to find this Wincon. The first card, Buried Alive, is a 3 CMC sorcery that says, search your library for up to 3 creature cards, put them into your graveyard, then shuffle. Since each of these cards are creatures, you can use Buried Alive to find them, put them into your graveyard, and then reanimate Trazyn the Infinite and win the game. The second card is Disciples of Gix. Disciples of Gix is a 6 CMC 4/4 creature, Phyrexian human, that says, when Disciples of Gix enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 3 artifact cards, put them into your graveyard, then shuffle. Since each of these cards are artifacts, you can use Disciples of Gix to find them, put them into your graveyard, reanimate Trazyn, and win the game. The next card is Insidious Dreams. Insidious Dreams is a 4 CMC instant that says, as an additional cost to play Insidious Dreams, discard X cards from your hand, search your library for X cards, then shuffle your library and put those cards on top of it in any order. Let's say all 3 of these cards are in your hand and you have no way to get them into your graveyard. You can find Insidious Dreams and use this as a discard outlet. There is another way to use Insidious Dreams to find this combo. We're going to use Insidious Dreams in conjunction with Incarnation Technique. Incarnation Technique is a 5 CMC sorcery with Demonstrate that says, mill 5 cards, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Let's say that this is our current board state. This is our hand. On an opponent's end step, we can tap Lake of the Dead, sacrificing this swamp to add 4 black mana to our mana pool. We can cast Insidious Dreams. We will discard these 4 cards. We will then go find our combo pieces. In this case, we're going to find Walking Ballista, Phyrexian Devourer, Trazyn the Infinite, and Incarnation Technique. We'll then shuffle our library, and we'll stack the deck, putting Incarnation Technique on top of the deck. We will then go to our churn. We'll untap, draw the Incarnation Technique, go to Upkeep, then we'll move to Main Phase 1. On Main Phase 1, we will tap Isengard, pay 2 life to make Incarnation Technique uncounterable. We will then tap Lake of the Dead to sacrifice Isengard to add 4 additional mana to our mana pool. We will then cast Incarnation Technique. We will mill 5 cards. We can then reanimate Trazyn using Incarnation technique to win the game. It is always good to have a backup win condition in case our first win condition falls through. The 3 cards we're going to use in the secondary win condition are Bolas' Citadel, Sensei's Divining Top, and Aetherflux Reservoir. Let's look at each card individually to see how they synergize together. The first card, Bolas' Citadel, is a 6 CMC legendary artifact. It says, you may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. It also has an activated ability if you tap it and sacrifice 10 non-land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. The next card, Sensei's Divining Top, is a 1 CMC artifact. It has an activated ability for 1 colorless mana. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. You can also tap, draw a card, then put Sensei's Divining Top on top of its owner's library. Our final card, Aetherflux Reservoir, is a 4 CMC artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. It also has an activated ability, pay 50 life. Aetherflux Reservoir deals 50 damage to target creature or player. The way that this combo works is simple. You need both Bolas' Citadel and Aetherflux Reservoir on the battlefield. Sensei's Divining Top can be in your hand, on the battlefield, or on top of your library. For this combo, you're going to want to keep track of the number of spells you've cast this turn. We're going to hard cast Sensei's Divining Top. Aetherflux Reservoir will see it. You will gain 1 life. Your storm count will go to 1. You will then tap Sensei's Divining Top. You will draw a card. You will return Sensei's Divining Top to the top of your library. Because you have Bolas' Citadel out, you can look at the top card of your library. You can cast that card by paying 1 life. We cast Sensei's Divining Top. Aetherflux Reservoir sees it. You will gain 2 life. Your storm count will go to 2. You can repeat this process over and over again until you've gained so much life that you can activate Aetherflux Reservoir multiple times, shoot the table, and win the game. You need to keep track of every spell you've cast on a turn you're using this combo. The reason for that, Aetherflux Reservoir will see all of those casts. So let's say you've only cast Sensei's Divining Top this turn. You've cast Sensei's Divining Top once, you gain 1 life. 2 times, you gain 2 life. 3 life. 10,000 times, you will gain 10,000 life. Similar to the Trazyn line, one of the best ways to get this combo out is to use Insidious Dreams. On somebody's end step, we'll tap this Lake of the Dead, sacrificing this swamp, adding 4 black mana to our mana pool. We'll then cast Insidious Dreams. We'll discard 4 cards to Insidious Dreams. We will search for Aetherflux Reservoir, Sensei's Divining Top, Bolas' Citadel, and for a little resilience, Defense Grid. I want to stack these cards in the following order: Bolas' Citadel, Defense Grid, Aetherflux Reservoir, and Sensei's Divining Top. We'll put these cards on top of our library and move to our turn. Untap, draw the Bolas' Citadel, move to Upkeep, Main Phase. On our main phase, we'll tap Phyrexian Tower to sacrifice Braids, adding 2 black mana to our mana pool. Because Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth is out, Phyrexian Tower counts as a swamp. We'll tap Lake of the Dead, sacrificing Phyrexian Tower, adding 4 black mana to our mana pool. We will hard cast Bolas' Citadel. We will look at the top card of our library, its Defense Grid. We can pay 2 life to cast it. We will look at the top card. We can pay 4 life to cast Aetherflux Reservoir. We can look at the top card. We can pay 1 life to cast Sensei's Divining Top. Aetherflux Reservoir has seen 4 spells cast this turn. We will gain 4 life. We can then combo off and win the game from there. While I don't want to deter you from playing this combo, this is a backup plan for a reason. It is not as resilient as our primary win condition with Trazyn the Infinite. It is very telegraphed, it's a common win condition in mono black, and players will be expecting this. For our first through line, we're going to use Hoarding Broodlord. Hoarding Broodlord is an 8 CMC 7/6 creature dragon. It has Convoke, Flying, and says, when Hoarding Broodlord enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may play it. Spells you cast from exile have Convoke. To use this through line, Hoarding Broodlord needs to be in your graveyard. You also need a reanimation spell, as well as mana to cast it, and you need an additional 2 colorless mana. If there's a creature on the battlefield, you only need 1 colorless mana. Let's walk through how this process works. We're going to tap this swamp, adding 1 black mana to our mana pool. We're going to cast Reanimate, targeting Hoarding Broodlord. We're going to lose 8 life. Hoarding Broodlord comes to the battlefield. On ETB, we're going to search for Saw in Half. Saw in Half is a 3 CMC instant. It says, destroy target creature. If that creature dies in this way, its controller creates 2 tokens that are copies of that creature, except their power is half that creature's power, and their toughness is half that creature's toughness. Round up each time. Saw in Half will then go into exile. Because Hoarding Broodlord is on the battlefield, Saw in Half can be convoked with any creature that I have on the battlefield. So I'm going to use Braids to pay for 1 black, and I'll use Hoarding Broodlord to pay for colorless and the cost of Saw in Half. I will tap Phyrexian Tower for an additional colorless, and I will cast Saw in Half, targeting Hoarding Broodlord. Hoarding Broodlord will then be destroyed. You will create 2 copies of Hoarding Broodlord. On ETB, the first card you will find is Sacrifice. Sacrifice is a 1 CMC instant that says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Add an amount of black mana equal to the sacrifice creature's mana value. This will go to exile. The second card you'll find is Peer into the Abyss. Peer into the Abyss is a 7 CMC sorcery that says, target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. Round up each time. This will also go into exile. You will then tap one of the copies of Hoarding Broodlord to convoke Sacrifice from exile. You will target the tapped copy of Hoarding Broodlord with Sacrifice, and because the copy is the same CMC as the actual card, you will add 8 black mana to your mana pool. From here, we will play Peer into the Abyss from exile. We will tap the untapped copy of Hoarding Broodlord to pay for 1 black mana and the cost of Peer into the Abyss. We will use an additional 6 black mana to pay for the rest of the card. We will cast Peer into the Abyss and draw half our library and lose half our life. An easy way to determine how many cards you're going to draw from Peer into the Abyss is to count how many cards are in your graveyard, in exile, on the battlefield, and in your hand. In this case, I know 23 cards are not in my deck. That means there are 77 cards in my deck. Because we round up each time for Peer into the Abyss, I will be drawing 39 cards. After you draw half your deck, you will still have 2 black mana floating. You will also have access to any ritual effects, tutors, or free mana rocks that you draw. You might even tutor or draw Scourge Familiar. Scourge Familiar is a 5 CMC 3/2 creature Phyrexian imp. It has flying and an activated ability that says, discard a card, add 1 black mana. Between Scourge Familiar, the tutors, the rituals, the free mana rocks, you should have enough resources to present a win. Be discerning when playing Peer into the Abyss. Because it says target player, this can be swatted, redirected, commandeered, and you can empower other people to win on top of your win attempt by taking the spell from you and getting all the benefit, leaving you with nothing. Our next through line involves 2 cards. The first, Necro Dominance, is a 3 CMC legendary enchantment. It says, skip your draw step. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay any amount of life. If you do, draw that many cards. Your maximum hand size is 5. If a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. The next card, Necropotence, is a 3 CMC enchantment that says, skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. Pay 1 life. Exile the top card of your library face down. Put that card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. At first glance, Necro Dominance and Necropotence may seem similar. They both provide tremendous card advantage at the cost of paying life. But when you look closer, the differences between the two are staggering. Necro Dominance is far weaker than Necro Potence, and it goes beyond the fact that Necro Dominance makes your maximum hand size 5. Necro Dominance has a replacement effect that says if a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead, whereas Necro Potence says whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. One is a replacement effect, one is a triggered effect. If I were to draw all these cards with Necro Dominance on my end step, I would have to discard down to 5 cards on my cleanup step. So when we do that, all of these cards would go to exile. If I were to do the same thing with Necro Potence, I would have to discard down to 7 cards, and then discard these cards. All of these cards would enter my graveyard at the same time, and each individual card would have a trigger that would go on the stack before it went to exile. The cool thing about Necro Potence is when we discard down to hand size on our cleanup step, all of the cards that we discard go into the graveyard at the same time. Each card then goes onto the stack as an individual trigger from Necro Potence to be exiled. So, for instance, if we have our combo pieces in the graveyard, we can respond to Trazyn the Infinite being exiled by casting Shallow Grave. We bring Trazyn the Infinite back from the graveyard. We can then combo off the Walking Ballista and Phyrexian Devourer and present a win. This is why Necro Potence is stronger than Necro Dominance. If you have a Necro Potence down and you discard cards, those cards still enter the graveyard. Whereas if you have Necro Dominance down and you discard cards, those cards are exiled instead. So if you draw a lot of cards with Necro Dominance and you do not want those cards to be exiled, you need a way to get rid of Necro Dominance. This is where Braids Arisen Nightmare comes in. We'll move to our end step. Our first end step trigger, we will draw cards with Necro Dominance. On our second end step trigger, we will sacrifice Necro Dominance. We will ask our opponents if they want to sacrifice an enchantment. They likely will not. We will then draw 3 cards. We will discard down to hand size. We will then have the ability to win at instant speed, assuming that we've discarded all of our combo pieces. The only thing we need is a way to reanimate Trazyn at instant speed. There is one more difference between Necro Dominance and Necro Potence. Necro Potence puts cards into your hand, whereas Necro Dominance draws them. What this means is Necro Potence isn't affected by things that punish card drawing, whereas Necro Dominance is. If your opponent has a Sheoldred the Apocalypse on the battlefield, for every card you draw with Necro Dominance, you will lose 2 life. There is an upside to this. If you have your own Sheoldred the Apocalypse, every card you draw with Necro Dominance, you will gain 2 life, which means you'll net a total of 1 life per card that you draw with Necro Dominance. This is one upside Necro Dominance has over Necro Potence. Our next through line involves 2 cards. The first, Vilis, Broker of Blood, is an 8 CMC 8/8 legendary creature demon. He has flying and an activated ability. If you pay 1 black mana and pay 2 life, target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Whenever you lose life, draw that many cards. Our second card is Crick, Son of Yawgmoth. Crick, Son of Yawgmoth, costs 4 colorless and 3 Phyrexian mana. He is a 2/2 legendary creature, Phyrexian horror minion. Phyrexian mana can be paid with either 1 black mana or 2 life. He has lifelink, and he also says, for each black mana in a cost, you may pay 2 life rather than pay that mana. Whenever you cast a black spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Crick, Son of Yawgmoth. To get this through line started, you'll need Vilis, Broker of Blood, and Crick, Son of Yawgmoth on the battlefield. If you have cards in your hand, you can also substitute Crick with Scourge Familiar. With Crick, Son of Yawgmoth on the field, for each black mana in a cost, you may pay 2 life rather than pay for that mana. We're going to use this to our advantage. Vilis, Broker of Blood's activated ability cost 1 black mana and an additional 2 life, so we're going to pay a total of 4 life to activate Vilis, Broker of Blood. Target creature will get -1/-1, and Vilis, Broker of Blood, will see that loss of life. You have lost a total of 4 life, therefore you will draw 4 cards. You can use Vilis, Broker of Blood's activated ability as many times as you like, so long as you have the life to pay for it. We are essentially drawing cards at a rate of 1 card per 1 life. This makes this combo even better than Necropotence or Necrodominance because we get the cards immediately instead of at our end step. Similar to Necrodominance, if you have Shieldred, the Apocalypse, on the battlefield, for every card you draw with Crick and Vilis, you will gain 1 life. What this also means is by having all 3 cards on the battlefield, you can draw your entire deck. For our final through line, we'll be using Razaketh, the Foul-Blooded. He's an 8 CMC, 8/8 legendary creature demon. He has flying and trample, and an activated ability that says, pay 2 life, sacrifice another creature. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle. The next card we'll be using is Orcish Bowmasters. Orcish Bowmasters is a 2 CMC 1/1 creature orc archer. It has flash and says, when Orcish Bowmasters enters the battlefield, and whenever an opponent draws a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, Orcish Bowmasters deals 1 damage to any target, then amass Orcs 1. The last card we'll need is Gerard's Hourglass Pendant. This is a 1 CMC legendary artifact. It has flash and says, if a player would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. It has an activated ability for 4 colorless mana. Tap, exile Gerard's Hourglass Pendant. Return to the battlefield tapped all artifact, creature, enchantment, and land cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. To get this line started, you'll need Razaketh the Foul-Blooded in the graveyard. You will also need a reanimation spell, Braids or another creature on the battlefield, and at least 1 colorless and 2 black mana. We will tap Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, and the Swamp to add 2 black mana to our mana pool. We will cast Goryo's Vengeance, targeting Razaketh the Foul-Blooded. Razaketh will return to the battlefield, and then we will use Razaketh the Foul-Blooded's activated ability. We will pay 2 life and sacrifice Braids, Arisen Nightmare, to search for a card. The card we will search for is Orcish Bowmasters. We will put Orcish Bowmasters into our hand, and then we will tap Lake of the Dead, sacrificing the Swamp to add 4 black mana to our mana pool. We will then use 2 of that mana to cast Orcish Bowmasters. On ETB, we'll deal 1 point of damage to any target. We will also amass Orcs 1. Pay 2 life and sacrifice this Orc army to Razaketh. You will search your library for Sacrifice. You will then pay an additional 2 life and sacrifice Orcish Bowmasters to Razaketh. You will search for Gerard's Hourglass Pendant. Use one of your floating black mana to pay for Sacrifice, targeting Razaketh the Foul-Blooded. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice Razaketh. You will generate 8 mana. You will now have 9 black mana in your mana pool. Cast Gerard's Hourglass Pendant. You will then activate Gerard's Hourglass Pendant, exiling the pendant. You will now have 4 black mana in your mana pool. Because you've exiled Gerard's Hourglass Pendant, return to the battlefield all of the creatures you've sacrificed this turn. So you'll return Razaketh, you'll return Braids herself, and you'll also return this Orcish Bowmasters. On ETB, you will make another Orc army, as well as deal 1 point of damage to any target. At this point, you can continue this tutor line by paying 2 life and sacrificing Braids to Razaketh. You will search for a ritual effect. In this case, I have Threshold, so I've chosen Cabal Ritual. I will use 2 of my floating black mana to cast Cabal Ritual. I will now add 5 black mana into my mana pool. I now have a total of 7 black mana floating. Pay 2 life and sacrifice the Orc army to Razaketh. You're going to search for Saw in Half. You're going to use 3 of your floating black mana to cast Saw in Half, targeting Orcish Bowmasters. When Saw in Half destroys Orcish Bowmasters, you will now have 2 copies of Orcish Bowmasters. On ETB, each will deal 1 point of damage to any target of your choice. You will also amass 2 Orc armies. This will give you an additional 4 tutors to use to find a win condition. At this point, it would be very simple to present a win. Here's how I would do it. I would pay 2 life and sacrifice an Orc army. I would search for Buried Alive. I would put this card into my hand. I would pay 3 mana to cast Buried Alive. I would go searching for our combo pieces. I would put those combo pieces into our graveyard, making sure Trazyn the Infinite is on top. I would pay 2 life and sacrifice the other Orc army. I would search for Shallow Grave. I would then tap Phyrexian Tower, sacrificing a copy of Orcish Bowmasters to make 2 black mana, and cast Shallow Grave to bring Trazyn the Infinite back. At this point, I would combo off and attempt to win. I do want to go over a few small synergies we run in this deck. The first is between Opposition Agent and Scheming Symmetry. Opposition Agent is a 3 CMC, 3/2 creature human rogue with flash. It says, you control your opponents while they're searching their libraries. While an opponent is searching their library, they exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast them. The second card, Scheming Symmetry, is a 1 CMC sorcery that says, choose 2 target players. Each of them searches their library for a card, then shuffles their library and puts that card on top of it. Something funny we can do with Opposition Agent and Scheming Symmetry is we can force 2 of our opponents to search their libraries with Scheming Symmetry. In response, we flash in Opposition Agent, and then we search each of those players' libraries for a card of our choice. For example, we can search one player's library for Thassa's Oracle, and the other for Demonic Consultation. Those cards then move into exile, and because of Opposition Agent, we can spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast them, which means we can use our opponent's cards to present a win. The next small synergy we're going to go over is between Imperial Seal and Street Wraith. Imperial Seal is a 1 CMC sorcery. It says, search your library for a card, then shuffle and put that card on top. You lose 2 life. The second card, Street Wraith, is a 5 CMC 3/4 creature Wraith. It has Swamp Walk and Cycling if you pay 2 life. Because Street Wraith allows us to draw a card by paying 2 life and discarding it, it turns cards like Imperial Seal, Scheming Symmetry, and Vampiric Tutor into 1 mana demonic tutors. Street Wraith also fuels cards like Songs of the Damned. The next small synergy is between Lake of the Dead and Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. Lake of the Dead has new rules text. It says, if this land would enter, sacrifice a swamp instead. If you do, put this land onto the battlefield. If you don't, put it in its owner's graveyard. You can tap it to add 1 black mana, or tap it, sacrifice a swamp, and add 4 black mana. Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth is a legendary land. It says, each land is a swamp in addition to its other land types. When Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth is out on the battlefield, every land in play is a swamp in addition to its other types. So if I play this Urza's Saga, it will come into play with 1 lore counter on it. Because it's also a swamp now, I can tap this for 1 black mana. I can then tap Lake of the Dead and sacrifice this Urza's Saga to make an additional 4 black mana. If I had to pick a favorite card in this deck that wasn't Braids Arisen Nightmare, it would definitely be Lake of the Dead. Lake of the Dead helps to extend our already strained resources, and by doing so, it allows us to play more spells, and by playing more spells, we can present a win sooner. I do want to bring up a few other considerations when it comes to this deck. I am on Mox Opal. Mox Opal usually doesn't have a problem coming online because I run a total of 25 artifacts in this deck. That being said, I probably should be on Vault of Whispers. I just prefer to run Swamps instead because I am on Lake of the Dead, and also, basic lands in a CEDH deck are underrated. I don't want to be affected by cards like Price of Progress, Magus of the Moon, Blood Moon, or Back to Basics. I am currently running Manifold Key and Tezzeret Cruel Captain. Both can help me untap cards like Mana Vault and Grim Monolith, and Manifold Key can be sacrificed to Braids on my end step to draw up to 3 cards. Tezzeret is great because he can be used to search my library for an artifact card with mana value 1 or less. If I had to cut one card between the two, I would say Manifold Key would need to go. In its place, I would put Peter Parker's Camera. The reason for this is Peter Parker's Camera allows me to double up on end step triggers for Braids. The only downside about this is I have to sacrifice another permanent. I am not currently on Peter Parker's Camera. The reason for that is I'm not currently running any fetch lands. If I were on fetch lands, I would be running the camera to take advantage of double triggering my fetch lands. The reason I am not on Peter Parker's Camera or fetch lands is because I'm running Lake of the Dead. If I were on fetch lands in the camera, I probably would be on Tainted Pact, and I'd probably have all differently named lands to take advantage of that card. I love Peter Parker's Camera, but I love Lake of the Dead a little bit more. The next card I want to discuss is Agatha's Soul Cauldron. This is a 2 CMC legendary artifact. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. You can tap it, exile target card from a graveyard. When a creature card is exiled in this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. The primary reason I'm considering Agatha's Soul Cauldron is it synergizes very well with our Devourer line. Instead of having Trazyn the Infinite, we can use Agatha's Soul Cauldron as a backup if he is not available. The way this works is we spend at least 2 mana to cast Walking Ballista with a +1/+1 counter on it. Soul Cauldron needs to be on the field, and Devourer needs to be in the graveyard. We then tap Cauldron to exile Phyrexian Devourer, and Walking Ballista gets an additional +1/+1 counter. It then has all the activated abilities of Phyrexian Devourer, which means at this point you can combo off and present a win. Another really cool synergy with Agatha's Soul Cauldron is that if one of your opponents controls a Ranger Captain of Eos and they crack it, that Ranger Captain will then go to the graveyard. You can then tap Agatha's Soul Cauldron, exiling that Ranger Captain of Eos, putting a +1/+1 counter onto one of your creatures. That creature will then effectively become a Ranger Captain for you to use. Another synergy with Agatha's Soul Cauldron is that if you have a Dothy Voidwalker on the battlefield, every single card that enters your opponent's graveyards from anywhere will be exiled with a Void counter on it. We can then tap and sacrifice the Voidwalker to play one of those cards without paying its mana cost. Because we have Agatha's Soul Cauldron, we can then tap and exile our sacrificed Dothy Voidwalker and put a +1/+1 counter onto one of our creatures. That creature will then effectively become a second Dothy Voidwalker that we can use to play one of those cards in exile without paying its mana cost. The next card is Liberator, Urza's Battlethopter. This is a 3 CMC 1/2 legendary artifact creature Thopter. It has flash, flying. You may cast colorless spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. Whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast that spell is greater than Liberator Urza's Battlethopter's power, put a +1/+1 counter on Liberator. The use case for Liberator is interesting because we have a huge Necro churn where we exile 20 to 30 cards off the top of our library, we could potentially draw all these artifacts, and because Liberator is out on the battlefield, we can cast these at flash speed. Now assuming all of our combo pieces are already in the graveyard, or we have to discard them because of Necropotence, we can respond to that if we have Reanimation in our hand and present a win. One of the reasons I love Braids Arisen Nightmare so much is that she does not feel like a solved commander. There are many ways to currently build her, and we have a few interchangeable win conditions that we can use to get there. Here are a few additional cards I might be considering in the future. Beseech the Mirror can be used as another way to bargain out Necropotence. We can also bargain out a card like Necrotic Ooze, so if we have Walking Ballista and Phyrexian Devourer already in our graveyard, and we bargain out the Ooze, we can then present a win right then and there. You can also build Braids in a Staxy kind of way by using Torpor Orb, Dampening Sphere, and Disruptor Flute. We also have access to Unmask that can make an opponent discard, or even ourselves discard. We have Fairy Macabre to deal with Underworld Breach lines, Baleful Mastery to deal with Thassa's Oracle, Flare of Malice, Thoughtseize, Contagion, Tiny Bones joins up, Faith of the Devoted as an alternative Wincon through Scourge Familiar, Chime of Night, Blood Fountain, Imp's Mischief, and if your local meta is very creature heavy, Toxic Deluge. In conclusion, I think this deck is difficult to play in the current CEDH meta. You absolutely can sit at tables with tier 1 decks such as Kinnan, Blue Farm, and Rogsai and present a win. I have done it. You just need a little luck, and you need to know what your deck does better than everybody else at the table. Braids is unique in that there are many ways to build around her. This is just one of those ways. She also has access to a wide variety of Wincons that I haven't discussed. I might save that for a future video. If you like what you saw here, please check out my deck list and primer on Moxfield. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching.